Here at Personal Edge Fitness, as I've said many times, all of our trainers possess, at minimum, a bachelor's degree in the field of either exercise science, exercise physiology, kinesiology, sport medicine, or athletic training. And one of the responsibilities of maintaining the most qualified staff in the Southeast is to make sure we keep up with our continuing education. On that note, our exercise coordinator, Charlie Merlot, visited the NSCA Alabama State Clinic in the last couple of months, and he's coming on to share it with us today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. My name is Garrett Williamson. I'm your host and president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for joining us today. My guest today on the show is Charlie Merlot. Charlie's been with us before. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Good to be back.
I appreciate you being back. We're going to be talking about a clinic that Charlie attended recently and share some information, some things that he learned, and touch on it. But if you're interested in any more information on this subject, reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. That's my email address. Contact us at our website, personaledgefitness.com, and of course our Facebook page, which is Personal Edge Fitness. If you'd rather, hit me up on Twitter at Team PE. Now, we're diving in talking about the NSCA Alabama State Clinic. Now, tell everybody what NSCA is.
So the NSCA is the National Strength Conditioning Association. It's what I've got my certification through, CSCS, Certified Strength Conditioning Coach.
There are tons of different certifications in personal training, strength and conditioning. The gold standard, there's two. There's the American College of Sport Medicine, their HFI or their exercise specialist, and of course the NSCA CSCS. I mean, probably the most difficult, I would say, to get. So, but Charlie attended the state conference just a month or so ago and came back with some fantastic information. So tell us about some of the people who were there and some of the things you picked up on.
It was a really cool experience just to get to listen to some of these people who have been in the field for, a really long time, and they've gotten a lot of good experience, a lot of good advice. And so one of the first ones I wanted to talk about was Zach Mathers, who is the director of performance at Samford. And his whole topic was putting it all together, a practical guide to collegiate planning and programming. On that note, besides
the position he holds, and most of these coaches, educators at different universities, whatever, after their name, it reads like an eye chart. I mean, besides having a master in education, he's also CSCS, he's RSCCD. That's a new one on me. But the qualifications, the background, these folks are fantastic, which is why, of course, we seek them out for continuing education. But
he was basically just giving some examples of the process he goes through when he's trying to program for his athletes. And I took away a few pieces of advice I thought were very valuable for anybody in the field. And the first one was avoiding randomness and sticking to a system.
Okay.
I thought that was very important. I can relate to that personally, just going back to my football days. Specifically remember a time where before every game we would do a walkthrough.
Sure.
And during that walkthrough, we would have about 3 plays preset that we knew going into the game, these are the 3 plays that we're going to run if everything goes to plan.
Sure.
But sometimes things don't go to plan. They come out
of course.
In a different formation. One time in particular, we came out playing a rival, and we thought they were going to come out in the usual formation that they had all year, and they actually came out in a wildcat, which is they had the running back at quarterback. And so was not what we planned for, so we had to make adjustment on the fly, and that's what we did. We just had to adjust. So
exactly. Well, that goes to the second point that you made in your notes on this about planning for perfect, but prepare for changes. It's the same thing we end up doing here as far as the client's concerned. So
yeah, exactly. So for us at Personal Edge, every client has their own program that we put together after their consultation, and it's a system that we follow for them to see the best results and success.
Right.
And but while we do have that system and that plan when they come in, we have to make adjustments sometimes. Sometimes you might have a client who comes in and says, hey, my knees bother me, or my shoulder's acting up.
Right.
And what we might have planned for that day might not be what they need in that moment. And so
Sure.
for us as professionals, it's our job to assess the situation,
Sure.
be able to make adjustments. And I think that's something that we do very well.
I like the way you're saying that about that's the same way as you were planning for those 3 plays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we do a consultation, interview a client, we get goals, but we also, as we start training them, their director or their client coordinator starts putting together, really realizing what their level of wellness is. That's the system that Charlie's talking about. You know, it's not just the X's and O's as far as the weights and the strength training they need and the fact they need to develop legs or whatever. It's what's making them feel better about themselves. But even that gets kind of, I wouldn't say tossed aside. We stay within the program, but it becomes secondary when we have one of these come up. So,
Yeah.
and as exercise coordinator, you would know that because you put together the whiteboard workout
I
every
do.
week, and at the same time have to adjust it for
Right.
clients that have particular problems or whatever.
Exactly. And that's something I tell them. I say, this is the plan. This is the general template for you to follow. But if there's an issue, there's a reason you can't do a certain exercise, come to me and I will, I'll put a substitute. I'll make a change for you
Sure.
based off of what you need. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I love doing the whiteboard is because it's available for everybody.
And that's what a lot of people don't know about personal training is the fact that, you're just going to write me up a program, or you're going to put together a program, we're going to run that program. Well, yeah, you've got that basic idea, but if you stay that rigid and you don't get another way of saying the plan for perfect, prepare for changes is Mike Tyson's famous quote. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah. And making those adaptations also. The adaptations on the program once somebody gets going and realizes, well, wait a second, I thought I wanted this, but this is really what I want, and being able to adapt and make those changes. So,
I think something that also he said that really puts a bow on this and wraps it all up is it's a quote that he said, and it's, "You dream in years, plan in months, evaluate in weeks, and ship daily." And I think that really encompasses everything that we do at Personal Edge. That we have these long-term goals that we set with clients. It's something that they are trying to achieve, but also I think it's very important to look at the day-to-day and to make short-term goals. It's like, all right, we've got this long-term goal. How are we going to reach that? How are we going to make steps where we can make, brick by brick, making slow strides to be able to get to that point?
Sure.
Because if you're always looking big picture, but you don't have the steps in place to make that change or to get where you're trying to get, then I think it's very hard to do that. And so that's something that we do.
Well, also having those steps too gives you those daily and weekly wins. I mean, if your only win is your long-term goal, I think it's going to be. I think that's going to be somewhat defeating. I mean, you saw that.
Right.
You saw that when you practiced. Yeah, you did repetitive things, but I'm sure there were times you came off the field and felt like, all right, I did that better than I've ever done it. I've accomplished something. That's step one.
Yeah.
And kind of build from there. So
definitely, yeah. I mean, I would have goals. I want to get this many tackles in a season, and every game, I'd work a little, trying to get a certain amount of tackles. And I mean, that just not having that end picture in mind, but also thinking, okay, I got to take this day by day and just do what I can that day. And I think the ship daily thing, like, you know what? I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to be present where my feet are, and I'm going to give it everything I got for today.
Exactly. So I don't mean to stay and spend time on that. That sounds fantastic. But there was quite a bit more that you got out of this conference.
I really liked listening to Coach Mathers speak, but I think my favorite talk of the clinic was Coach Zach Woodfin, and he is the director of performance for the USFL up in Birmingham.
Awesome.
And so it was really, really awesome to hear him speak. And his whole presentation was in-season training for American football, which is something that I can relate to very well. I was super excited to see that he was going to be talking on that topic. And so the whole thing is really focused on getting stronger as you go longer and in-season training and not stopping strength training when the season starts. I think that's a misconception that people have. When you start playing the sport, you kind of take a step back from the weights and the training, and you lose the focus on that, which I think that's where a lot of people run into issues if that's the way that they approach in season.
Too many times, I think, and you've seen this more, with the athletes that you train that come in here, you've probably seen this more than I have. In the off season, we're going to do strength training, we're going to get ready and what have you. And then that seems to me to get somewhat thrown by the wayside once season goes. And I mean, basic exercise physiology 101 of you're going to atrophy muscle 72 hours after a workout seems to me that you would continue that going. But you would think, okay, you need a lot of rest, you don't need the strength training. But you're saying that he was talking about that's not really the the recipe.
No, I mean, yeah. So basically, what he talked about was programming high intensity and lower volume. And something to think about when you're programming for in season is volume is going to be the driver of fatigue. And so if you're accumulating a lot of volume, that's what's going to end up making you more tired. And how you plan for your in season training can determine the outcome. If you throw in, five sets of 10 on back squat, and that's your in-season model for training, then yes, it's going to negatively affect your performance. But if
that's what you're talking about, the volume. I mean, really, that's too much volume.
Right, like too many reps for an exercise. But if you're only doing 4 sets of 1, so that's 4 reps compared to 50 reps. Sure. But that 4 sets of 1 is at 80%, so it's a higher intensity to what your relative max would be. But you're doing less volume, so you're not accumulating as much fatigue. Sure. You're still going to see those qualities carry over that you're looking for to maintain that strength, that power. Right. But you're not getting the volume that's going to push you to a fatigue state where it's going to decrease your performance.
Well, and hitting at 80%. I mean, and that's pretty high. If you think about it, it's funny when it's almost like going back to the years, months, and weeks thing when thinking about it. If you think about it in like a season. In season, you're going to be at 100%. You're going to be, but each day you walk in the gym, you're cold. Yeah. You're cold, whatever. So in order to be able to get that aggressive and go after, because that scares a lot of people I know when they think about, oh gosh, go heavy and really get aggressive. But what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, dropping that volume down, dropping those 5 sets, that highly repetitive motion, but in each rep, in each step, you go to 80%. That makes sense, but that's where your warm up. And so important. So, and briefly, I know that's not what you covered in there, but when you're talking about going at 80%, speak a little bit to like I watch you with your athletes, especially doing that the dynamic warm up and stuff that you do. Just briefly give us so that you can go at 80%. I see you do it yourself. So
I think a warm up is the most important part of a workout because it's going to determine how the session goes. It's going to determine not only your physical state but your mental state. If you come in, just not taking it very serious, if you just kind of messing around, then you're more than likely not going to have a good day. And so I personally use the warm up as kind of a systems check for especially the athletes that come in to see, okay, how are they feeling? If they're not being their usual self, joking around, or if they're moving slow, they might be, very fatigued that day or they've had a stressful day because working out is a form of stress that the body encounters. So, I think I've heard it said that, as personal trainers, strength coaches, we're stress managers. Right. So when somebody comes in, they've had a stressful day, we might need to adjust based off because workout is a form of stress.
And then when you do your warm up, though, I want you to do this. It's different. Most people think of a warm up as doing a little cardio, getting circulation going, which is incredibly important. Don't get me wrong. But I've watched you because you've been able to go heavy with your athletes, even in a 30-minute session. Go heavy, go aggressive with them. But it seems like your warm-up is patterned by what lift are we doing and how aggressive are we getting on that lift.
Yeah, so, I start off pretty general in the warm-up, just a full-body movement. I do like to do a lot of bear crawls, things like that. But then, as we get closer to the primary lift, we'll do something a lot more specific to prepare those muscle groups that we're trying to work to get them ready for the activity of the day.
And once you've done that, and the reason I'm beating this to death is that when you talk about going at 80%, I think that people have, like you said at the beginning of it, there's a misconception. They have a misconception about, well, if you're going to go 80%, you're going to have to do several reps at 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. No, not really. If you know how to accurately warm up those muscle groups that you're using, when you go to that first lift and go to that one lift, you can go at 80%. Am I right? That's looks like what you're doing when you're warming up.
Yeah, we do a few warm up sets, prior to we get to 80%, but it might be 1 or 2 warm up sets, so you're not having to build up 4 or 5 sets of warming up to get to that 80%. Because like you said before, by then we've done, at least a 5-minute warm up, prepping their body for that. So they should be in a good place to perform. Right. And then from there, we just build it up for 1 to 2 sets to the working sets.
I don't think Charlie knew I was going to ask him about that, but I'm driving that home because again, I'm staying on this topic of 80%, that high rep. But you can do that in season and stay effective about maintaining your strength through the the program and do it safely by the method you're doing, by the method you're going about. A lot of the stuff you talked about when we talked about long-term athletic development. And if you didn't see that, there's the podcast that we just did. It's in the 160 range, and there was a 3 or 4 part podcast we did on another seminar that Charlie attended, and it's called Long-Term Athletic Development. And we actually did that into 4 parts because it was so developed. But it talked about that in the different age groups and what have you going on that. Back to what he was saying, because I love this when you shared this with me about getting stronger to go longer.
Yeah, so he gave 3 goals for sports performance, and I thought they were awesome. So the first one is going to be available. One of my favorite sayings is the best ability is availability. So if you're injured in playing a sport, you're not going to do very much help, or you're not going to help your team very much being on the bench.
You notice how he figured that out without a calculator. I mean, I was amazed. You're right. You're exactly right. I mean, it's very simple.
Yeah, if you're dealing with, especially a soft tissue injury, usually those are going to be caused by your muscle or tendon, whatever that may be, can't handle the force that is being put through it. That it's being required of, and so. One of the things that helps prevent that is going to be in-season training and training heavy, keeping those tissues to be able to withstand high loads, high forces. Because when you're sprinting, jumping, making cuts, a lot of force is going through your body, and so you need to be able to stay prepared to handle that. Right. The next one is going to be along that same line: maximize ability to produce and absorb force. Okay. So like what I just said. So. Maximizing the ability to produce force. So that's going to be, whenever you go to, take off in a cut or something, and then absorb force in relating to football. If somebody tries to hit you or you're having to take on some force, the ability to absorb that and your body not break down in a sense. If you have a weak link in the chain where it's not going to break.
Mentally, your neuromotor system, it can handle, I know I need to make this cut, I've got to play it right here, whatever. Let's say you've got a weakness anywhere around the quad or even the hamstring. Well, that pressure is going to go right into that knee and boom. So, and that goes back to, it's what the gentleman was talking about. It goes right back to maintaining that strength training during season. So
yeah, and that leads right into the third point, which is limit injury risk and achieve peak performance late in the season. And when you think about it, you want to be performing your best when it's playoff time, when you're playing for a championship. You don't want to peak early in the season, and then when it gets close to playoffs, everybody starts getting slower. They're less explosive. You're coming up with all these soft tissue injuries, and so you want to peak late in the season. But how do you do that? Well, it's through grinding out through the in season, keeping the volume low, but still keeping the intensity high. I think if you have a mindset of, I just want to maintain my strength, I just want to go into the season to maintain what I built in the off season, I think that's a poor attitude to have going into the season. You need to train just as hard as you did in the off season, and it's totally it's definitely a possibility to gain strength while in the in season. Some people think once the off season's over, I don't need to try to gain any more strength, I just need to maintain. I definitely disagree with that. I think it's definitely possible to make strength gains during the season.
Well, like I say, Charlie, I don't mean to beat 80% death, but there's other points you had that Zach Mathers talked about as far as training in season and what have you.
Yeah, so a lot of times you might hear a broadcaster say about a team is, man, they sure do look well rested, like they must have rested really well for this game. And
I hear that in the stands.
Right.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
And that couldn't be further from the truth. You don't rest to stay fresh. You stay strong to stay fresh.
Right.
And so going back to that in-season training that we talked about, high intensity, low volume, still grinding in the weight room, still pushing yourself.
Right.
Not, having that maintain mindset, but going in there and working hard, trying to improve your strength, trying to make gains. And then I think that is the whole key when it comes to in-season training is not having that mindset of maintaining, but pushing yourself and getting to work.
This is a quantum leap from the old thought process, which I'm so glad we're away from now. When I started training 30 years ago, it was well ingrained. The first and foremost, that strength training could make you bulky and slow and muscle bound became a term. I've covered that in one of the podcasts. But now we got into an acceptance of, okay, well, you can do a few curls to maintain maintain some strength. But I love this approach that he's saying. He's saying, it's not really let off the pedal. It's just mess with the transmission a little bit, go at it a different way. And with all the strength training you've done, not only yourself, but with clients. And actually, I think you and I were texting during a game one time. You were just obsessed watching the warm-up. As much as you follow college and pro football and other sports for that matter, have you been able to notice difference, and be able to see, obviously that team's got a really good strength program, whatever, and is that something you've picked up on?
Oh, for sure. I mean, in high school, I was very blessed to have a phenomenal strength conditioning program and somebody that knew what they were doing. And so it was very evident in high school, the ones that had that and the ones that didn't. And then in junior college, the same way. Jones is actually, I don't know if they still are, but at the time they were the only junior college, at least in Mississippi, to have a strength conditioning coach.
Wow.
Usually it was, an offensive line coach or somebody else that was running the weight room. And so that was one of the reasons I went there is for that, because I was like, wow, like they're serious about strength conditioning. They value it and they see the importance of it.
Right.
And so I think it makes all the difference in the world when you have somebody that is doing the things that these guys are doing, that are planning for perfect, making those changes, whether it be in season or off season, and that have that grind mindset. They're not looking to maintain; they're looking to go.
When I'm watching, especially I'm a huge college football fan, and I'm watching that, and I see injury after injury on a team, and I keep hearing a team, "Wow, it's been great that it had so quote unquote so many injuries," and it's not that you can't have. And I'm speaking out of turn. You know more about this than I do. Not that you can't have, events and lightning strike and happenstance, but when you have it over and over again on the same team, I've got to think that, that's strength training. That's either doing the right strength training in season, not just, we always think it's preseason, but honestly, from what you're telling me here, it seems like, okay, probably their in-season training may be lacking a bit.
Yeah, I mean, for those bigger schools that can do that, they track a lot of data when it comes to injuries, and they look at, okay, we've had 5 ACL tears and 7 pulled hamstrings, and they look at all these injuries and they track it and they say, okay, well, if we're having this many issues with this certain injury, maybe we need to adjust our training to try to prevent that, to try to make a change that will help that not happen in the future. And so I think it's definitely something that you can track and something that you can adjust to try to prevent those injuries in season. And part of that is keeping that high intensity, lowering the volume.
Right.
I think it was a really, really good talk.
I've got a lot of it, but when you and I were just talking about it, I love keying on that, how to stay low volume, but keep that aggressiveness, keep going for those numbers. I thought was fantastic. By any chance, did they happen to talk about anything else at the seminar? Did they cover anything else there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I knew it wouldn't be a Personal Edge podcast if we didn't talk about water. So.
Really? I had no idea. I wasn't trying to key anything. That's for sure. And we sent Charlie to the conference as our exercise coordinator. We want him keyed up on all the latest and greatest information. Did send him there, but I promise you, I didn't pay for the conference. And you need to know that prior to hearing what he's going to talk about.
Whenever I saw this on the list of speakers, I immediately told Garrett that he was going to love what I came back with. So, so Dr. Courtney Benjamin, she's an assistant professor at Samford, and she was talking about heat mitigation strategies, which is honestly something that I'm not too familiar with. I know I'm really passionate about strength conditioning and learning about the weight room and work building strength and speed, but I never had spent much time looking into hydration and things like that. And so I was very interested to hear her talk.
Sure.
And one of the unique points that she made that really piqued my interest is she was talking about just the effects of sweat, and what sweat is designed to do is as you're sweating, the water is supposed to evaporate, and then it's going to take heat with it that your body is producing.
Right.
And you've always hear of these different clothes that are supposed to be dry fit, and if you have a T-shirt that gets really wet, then if the sweat is dripping off your body, it's not going to evaporate and take the heat with it. And so, if you have somebody who's like, man, I'm soaking sweat and, it's dripping off of me, then that might be an indicator that the environment that you're in isn't, the heat is, or the sweat isn't evaporating. So you're not losing that heat that your body is trying to get rid of, which personally I thought was interesting. I had never considered it that way, because usually when I have a hard workout and I'm like, man, I'm sweating good, I'm soaking sweat. And, and then, I was like, oh, that's probably not a good thing. That's not my body. It's not what my body is trying to do.
Right.
So she really touched on, sweating, and then also, after all the sweating that you're doing and exercise or playing a sport, the importance of hydration and what things to look for whenever, whenever you are playing your sport, and how to hydrate.
And I want to point out also these things that, and I know what you're going to go over, the things that you're going to go over as far as dealing with hydration when you're working out. You need to pay attention to these all the time when you're exercising, not just when you're, exercising when you've got, I'm dripping in sweat, now let me go address my hydration. I mean, because if, from what she was saying, your body sweats and then the sweat evaporates and takes the heat with it. Therefore, you're lacking evidence of sweat on you. It doesn't mean that you're not losing hydration. This is what we talk about to a lot of people about in the summer when people are in offices. And we talk about staying hydrated. Oh, I'm in the office. I've got air conditioning. Right. Your body is still releasing heat. It's just evaporating because you've got this giant dehumidifier that's pulling it away. So this is, it's not just when you sweat. It's always, as far as that goes. But what were the points she was talking about watching for us? I thought this was interesting.
So she gave essentially a checklist of things to look for when it comes to hydration and checking to see if you're dehydrated. And she used the acronym WUT, W-U-T.
Okay.
And so the W is going to be weight. And so if you lose a body mass percentage of greater than 1%, that could be a key indicator that you are dehydrated. Right. And that is after a bout of exercise. So, typically we did this in football. Prior to our practice, everybody would weigh in, and then after the practice, we'd weigh out.
Right.
And then they would track that and say, if you're greater than 1% down on body weight, then you need to drink more fluids to try to get that hydration level back up.
Sure.
Another one, the U stands for urine. And so she actually showed us a color scale of the different shades of urine and what's considered hydrated and what's considered not.
Right.
And on the scale, if it's a urine color greater than 5, which as you add, the more dehydrated you get, the darker it's going to get. Right. Then that could be another indicator that you're dehydrated. And the last one for T is feeling of thirst. Okay. And while she did mention that, although it could be an indicator, typically by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So
I'll drop the mic now.
You would like to agree with that. So
exactly.
Thirst, it could be an indicator, but it's also probably too late by then. You need to be drinking before that. And so, so basically, these are a checklist, and then so if you check off 2 of those things, then you're likely dehydrated. Wow. Now, if you're all 3, if you have less than, or if you're greater than 1% decrease in body weight, greater than a 5 on the urine scale, and you're thirsty, then you're very likely dehydrated. And so that is a definite concern. Sure. But I thought that was just a really cool trick for anybody, and also athletes, just to be able to use prior to practice, or just just throughout your day, just to think about those things and whether or not you're hydrated.
We have this with most of our clients. Everybody's looking for goals, they're looking for changes, and that all gets seriously inhibited. We think when we talk about food nutrition, people in the know think about, okay, we got to make sure I've got plenty of protein. Those of us who know also know that you got to have enough calories for that protein, but you're going to inhibit all of your functions, especially your repair, if your hydration is down. And processing all those different either vitamins you're taking in or nutrients you're taking in, including protein or whatever, that's going to leach hydration. So think about it. If you may be ravenous after work, I'm sure when you came off the field at Jones that it's a good idea to keep arms and legs away from you at the dinner table. I mean,
we definitely would hit the cafeteria hard after a game for sure.
I'm sure you're not just grazing the salad bar, right?
No.
So you're
all
definitely
the carbs.
Well, you're going to feel that big time. But kudos to Jones at the junior college level to know to do those weigh-ins and weigh-outs so that you can replenish that, because then you're going to go in and you want all that stuff that you're going to be putting in to be effective for you. So staying hydrated, of course, the key.
I just thought of a funny story. So,
Please.
After every practice, we would have team meetings after dinner. And one of the things my defensive coordinator would make us do, and at the time I thought it was dumb because I was just in college. I didn't know any better, but he would have a case of waters in his office, and before the meeting started, everybody had to chug 2 16-ounce bottles of water before we could start. And so, I mean, sometimes we'd just be sitting there waiting for somebody to chug their water.
Right.
But I mean, looking back, I'm like, that's smart, especially after, an hour and a half practice.
Sure.
People are going to be dehydrated. So making sure they get that, 30 ounces of water in, could make a big difference. And so, I just thought that was funny.
Did that seem to get easier the more y'all did it, though?
It did. Hopefully. I mean, I don't know if you saw my bottle earlier, but now, I mean, I drink.
Show it to the camera here, so we can't see. So it's about as big as his arm.
It's about as big as my head. It's 73 ounces, and I drink 2 of them a day. I drink one in the morning, the one in the second half of the day.
Right.
And when you first start, it's not easy. You feel full.
Sure.
But over time, your body adjusts to it, and I actually crave that now. If I don't get those 2 full bottles in, I notice these signs. I feel thirsty. I don't track my weight, but still at those same times, I can feel the effects on my body, whether that's through my workouts or just how I feel, just normal.
Sure.
It definitely affects me. And so, I think what she talked about as far as hydration goes doesn't just apply to sports, it applies to everybody.
By the way, I want to remind you, if you have any more questions, we're really touching on some things. This, I'm looking at notes that you made basically for the podcast, and I know that you got even a lot more information. You came back buzzing from it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more information here, and we're just trying to touch on to let you know some of the things that Charlie learned about it. But if you're interested in learning more, feel free to contact us. Again, you can call me at 251-278-3343. Reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. Also reach out to us at our website and our Facebook page and Twitter at Team PE if you have any other questions about that. Thinking back on the seminar you covered, because you covered a lot of information here, but anything else that stuck with you or things you learned, anything else you wanted to add?
Going back to the start of the podcast with Coach Mathers, I really like what he said about dreaming years, planning months, evaluating weeks, and ship daily. I think that really, I can really relate to that right now. Josh and I are doing Dead December.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a month of deadlifts. It's 5 days a week. Every day you're doing some type of deadlifting.
Right.
And it's really fun. It's a challenge.
Sure.
But I think it perfectly aligns with what he said is, before every year, I look at my year and I try to set out some goals for myself. And, and then, I have to make steps and plan for how I'm going to do that. And so, you plan in months, and then each week I might need to evaluate and to make changes based off of where I'm at.
Sure.
And then ship daily, every day I'm going to get after it. I'm going to grind. I'm going to do what I got to do to reach my dream, to reach my goal.
Right.
I really can relate to that, especially right now going through Dead
But
December.
seriously resonates with you with Dead December. And Josh, those of you, y'all have seen him on the program before. He's one of our directors. He's our Eastern Shore manager. And this is something y'all have had going on. I'm actually glad you brought it up because letting everybody know that y'all have got some videos and some stuff that's going to come out on social media about this. And I think y'all were talking about doing something in the future, getting participants to be involved with y'all.
Yeah, this first time doing it, we were just testing the waters out.
Sure.
I've done it. I did it last year. This is his first time to do it, and so we were just kind of getting a feel for what it would look like. But yeah, we've got a lot of cool content coming out. We've been recording our lifts and just having fun with it, and so we'll be releasing that soon. And we actually have our PR day Saturday. Him and I are going to come up here, try to break some records. It'll be fun. We'll play some music, and and so for the future, we would like to implement this with clients, those that would be interested in learning how to deadlift and doing it in a correct and safe way.
Sure.
I think I love doing deadlifts personally. I think it's one of the most exercises that has the most carryover for life, just picking things up off the floor. It's a necessity. And so I think it's
needless to say how it translates to athletes too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I could go on about that all day. So,
yeah, exactly.
So anybody that would be interested in learning how to do it correctly, and that would be passionate about it, have a good time. I think it would be a really good way to
Right.
get people engaged and
Right.
just kind of create a community.
And this is something that, like I say, they're going to have this coming out on social media. They're going to be sharing some information. We'll be putting this together in the future. I look forward to it. So I'm glad we touched on that. So Thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us about what you learned at the conference. I look forward to watching that come more into play and be shared with our staff. So we're always trying to dispel the myths of health, fitness, and wellness. We're always also trying to stay on the cutting edge of everything we do. Keeping up with the continuing education, going to conferences, learning more is just one more way we help you reach your level of wellness. Charlie, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank y'all very much for checking out the podcast. Stay tuned for more episodes and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.